The weight of gold that doesn't shine. Samuel and his personal transformation through Stoic philosophy. Samuel had spent 9 years working at the same company. He was the kind of person everyone described as reliable, responsible, stable. But behind that always unchanging appearance, there was something more complex. A deep fear of failure, of deceiving others, of being discovered as not as strong as people believed. That fear had followed him since childhood, but he hid it well. To everyone else, Samuel was flawless. At 34, he had achieved a relatively high position in the company. He wasn't a millionaire, but he lived comfortably. He had an apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a car he paid for on time, and a salary that allowed him to live without constant worry. His life seemed to run like a perfectly tuned clock. But when his mother suddenly became ill and the company began demanding more time than he could give, his life started to feel like something he no longer controlled. He woke up tired, worked exhausted, and went back to sleep with the constant feeling of being in debt to something or someone. One early morning, while trying to make coffee to stay awake before heading to the hospital, he noticed his hands were shaking. It wasn't from the cold. It was an internal emotional tremor, as if his body were trying to tell him something he had ignored for years. His mother, lying in her hospital bed, looked him in the eyes and said, "Samuel, when was the last time you felt at peace?" He didn't know how to answer, not because he didn't want to, but because he truly had no idea. Peace to him was a distant concept, a luxury, something you reached only when everything was perfect. And his life hadn't been that way for years. The following weeks became a mix of stress, guilt, and silences heavier than words. Between hospital shifts, urgent meetings, delayed reports, and calls from his boss, Samuel began to feel that he was losing something important inside himself, something he couldn't name. One day, while waiting for medical test results, he stepped into the hospital garden to get some air. There, he saw an older man sitting on a bench, reading a small, worn-out book. He looked completely calm despite the chaos around him. Ambulances, rushing nurses, crying families. He didn't move. He just read. Samuel felt drawn to the calm of this stranger and approached without really meaning to. "May I sit?" he asked. The man looked up, smiled softly, and nodded. For a moment they shared silence, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It didn't weigh on him. It was a silence that rested. "What are you reading?" Samuel finally asked. "An old friend," the man replied, lifting the book. "Meditations by Marcus Aurelius." Samuel raised his eyebrows. He had heard the name before, but had never read him. "Is it good?" The man let out a small laugh. "More than good. It's necessary." "Necessary for what?" Samuel asked. The man closed the book calmly. "To remember that we have control over almost nothing except our response. And that what we think is the end is often just an uncomfortable beginning." A longer silence followed. Samuel looked toward the hospital windows, toward the room where his mother slept. The man, as if reading his thoughts, added, "Life is always going to place weight on us. Sometimes it's gold and sometimes it's just stone. But even gold is heavy, you know. Sometimes heavier than stone." Samuel felt a soft odor in his chest. That sentence pierced him. He had spent years carrying gold, responsibilities, reputation, expectations, apparent success, without ever asking how much it weighed. "And how do you know what to let go of?" Samuel asked. The man opened the book and pointed to a line. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do only what is within your power and let go of the rest." Then he added, "Sometimes what we need to let go of isn't what we do, but who we think we're supposed to be." Samuel swallowed. For the first time in weeks, he took a deep breath without feeling the air get stuck in his chest. The man stood up slowly. "I hope you find it he said before leaving.
Find what?
Samuel asked. The answer you already carry inside, he replied as he walked away. You just need silence to hear it. Samuel never saw him again. That same night, while sitting beside his mother, he opened his phone browser and searched for the book. He downloaded a digital version and began reading, not understanding much at first. The sentences were simple, but deep, like each one was written for someone carrying too much. Days passed. His mother slowly improved. Samuel was still exhausted, but something in his mind began to settle. He started repeating one sentence every morning. I can handle what depends on me. What doesn't, I let go. He repeated it before work, before entering the hospital, before talking to his boss. And although nothing changed on the outside, Samuel began to change on the inside. Just when things seemed to stabilize, another blow arrived. The company announced a merger and layoffs began. Samuel, the flawless employee, the reliable one, the stable one, was let go. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was exhausted, sad, confused. He had given his life to a place that had no trouble letting him go. That night, sitting in his apartment living room, with no lights, no TV, and no company other than his thoughts, fear set in. Real fear, deep fear, fear of not knowing what to do next. Then he remembered the man at the hospital. He remembered the weight of gold. He remembered that losing something does not mean losing yourself. He opened the book again and read a line that felt written for that exact moment. If you feel harmed, it is your mind that chooses to feel harmed. You can choose otherwise. It wasn't empty comfort. It wasn't a mental trick. It was an invitation to look at the problem without becoming it, to observe the storm without letting it destroy the ship. The next day, Samuel went out for a walk with no destination and no expectations. He walked through streets he never usually took, until he reached a quiet park where children were playing and elderly people chatted on benches. On the ground, he noticed a folded note. What caught his attention was a strange symbol drawn on it. He opened it. There was no name, no address, no signature. It simply said, "Life isn't taking anything from you. It's giving you space back." Samuel sat down on a bench, stunned. He didn't know if the note was a coincidence, a lost message, or a mysterious gift from fate. But he felt something he hadn't felt in months: relief. He returned home with an idea that had been circling his mind for a long time, one he had always ignored out of fear. Starting his own small consulting business for small companies, helping them organize processes, finances, administration, everything he had learned over the years, what he actually knew how to do. He spent weeks planning. He didn't have much money, but he had knowledge, time, and something he had never had before: clarity. His mother, now recovered, hugged him when he told her, "I'm proud of you," she said. "Not because of what you're going to do, but because you're finally choosing yourself." The business wasn't easy at first. During the first few months, he barely landed 3 clients. He worked from his apartment living room, improvising an office with an old table. But every small project he completed, every company that improved a little because of his work, felt like a quiet victory. One afternoon, while reviewing papers, he found the notebook where he had written down the man's phrase from the hospital. "What we must let go of isn't what we do, but who we think we're supposed to be." And he understood that this sentence defined his entire transformation. He had stopped being the perfect employee. He had stopped carrying gold that didn't shine. He had stopped living to meet other people's expectations and had begun to simply be himself. He didn't know if his business would grow. He didn't know if he would succeed. He didn't know if fear would return someday. But for the first time in his life, he didn't need certainty in order to move forward. One morning, while making coffee, his hands no longer shaking, he remembered one final line from the book. "Do not expect life to be easy. Expect yourself to be stronger than yesterday. And Samuel smiled, because he finally understood that strength had never been in his job, his salary, or his reputation. Strength had always been there, silent, patient, waiting for him to stop running away from himself. If you're interested in Stoicism, personal growth, and life stories, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Follow us on all our social media platforms and join our community of Stoic stories.